episode of Surviving the Survivor, we bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, SGS Nation, and welcome to this amazing Friday, a live Friday edition of Great Scott. It's your true crime Phil on Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And not only is Friday the best of the best guests, but two of my favorites. I realize these two gentlemen who I love dearly, they anchor me to sanity. Without Fridays, without having Fil and Scott here every Friday, yes, it is Stressed Out Joel Friday. This is a particularly stressful Friday, which we'll get into in a moment. Without these two men, one is the chairman, CEO, co-founder, vice president of Kindred Spirits Investigations. That would be Phil Waters in the beautiful Aloha shirt, the Hawaiian shirt. He is also America's most respected detective. He was a detective for 137 years, and he's good at it. And then you've got Agent Scott Duffy. Proud to call him. Do any of your friends call you Agent Duffy, Scott?
No.
No one. No one says, "Hey, Agent." No one. Your kids call you Agent Duffy.
And it's special agent.
Especially.
And I'm not sure. You can take that however you want. It is special agent.
That word is special. So Scott Duffy, for those who do not know, is retired. By the way, Scott Duffy, right off the bat, I'm distracted. You of all people on planet Earth must tonight or tomorrow night watch How to Rob a Bank on Netflix. Have you seen it?
No, but it is on my list of things to watch.
It is a documentary about the FBI's most wanted man in the mid-1990s. He was a bank robber in Seattle, Washington, and he was very good at it. And I found it really fascinating, actually. It was a really interesting, I thought, well-done documentary, and that is Scott Duffy's wheelhouse. And they interview many FBI agents who are trying to capture this guy. And, of course, the law always wins because they caught this guy at the end. I won't tell you how it all ends, but it is an interesting documentary, to say the least. So, Scott, get that higher up on your list. Meanwhile, we're going to get into this was a really disturbing, weird, crazy press conference, but that's what our Fridays are about. So I said, hey, let's do this. We're going to watch little clips of this, including a forensic psychologist and best guest, Gary Bricado, who was present at this news conference. And we'll get into that in a moment. But first, Karen Reed trial. I wasn't planning to talk about this, but we turned it on today. Phil Waters in this circus that they call a trial. The pool camera accidentally catches one of the jurors on camera to the entire world. That juror has now since been dismissed. It's just one of a zillion circus-like events at this trial. You say to everyone, trials should not be televised. They're only for the jurors. Maybe you make a good point. Do you believe that more firmly after watching the insanity that is the Karen Reed trial? Phil Waters, I'm talking to you.
Repeat that last part.
You always say that you don't care, that you basically don't think trials should be publicly televised because they're in a public courtroom, that only the jurors need to see it. And I'm starting to think maybe you're right, because this is an absolute circus. You've got people wearing, they've got these giant red Solo cups that they're walking around in. They're wearing crazy things outside the courthouse. This trooper was a disaster for the Commonwealth. But what's being lost in this is the evidence in the case itself. Do you stand by the fact that it should not be televised after witnessing this circus-like atmosphere?
I do. I think it's turned into a carnival. It's a sideshow now, and the what I take away from this is the victim in this case is now being lost. And other than just a mention of his name, because he happens to be the victim, but the atmosphere is now it's a dumpster fire, and the prosecution. I mean, I've not watched this thing steadily, but watching the updates, looking at some of the testimony, I just think the prosecution has not done a great job. In my view, they've tried to stay on track, but this guy's got a defense attorney. She's got a defense attorney that's he's one of those guys that says every outlandish thing he can think of and get away with in that courtroom, and it's directed at witnesses. And I did watch some of the testimony on Proctor, and oh my gosh, that guy, what an embarrassment to law enforcement. See, when I see something like that happen, that doesn't reflect just on the Massachusetts State Police. It reflects on every hardworking law enforcement officer across the country wearing a badge. And I've seen it before. This is not the first time I've seen where officers, detectives, whomever will get on these freaking phones and send text messages like they think they're not going to go anywhere other than to the person they're sending them to. To state, some of the things that he said, just if he had just said them, were disgusting, were unprofessional, were diminishing to the respect that should have been given to that investigation, especially since it was a fellow law enforcement officer. His commentary about she's hot and, didn't find any nude photos on the phone, and he hates the defense attorney. Well, that's all well and good that he found those things or didn't find those things or feels that way. But the point is that should never have been expressed to anyone in a text message. And so it's one of those things that's going to come up and bite you, and it has. So what I'm concerned about in this trial, I have not changed my view of the evidence. The evidence, all roads, at least at this point, unless they come up with something with a defense that blows up the evidence, all roads are leading to her. Now, people can scream about conspiracies and all that good stuff. I don't listen to all that. That's just a bunch of noise. So follow the evidence. And even the witness testimony, if you look at the witness testimony and get rid of these cherry-picked, things that cause everybody to blanch, the witness testimony is consistent with the evidence. So I just don't, when you see a defense attorney doing what he's doing, this goes back to when I'm watching this Proctor guy, I'm thinking of Mark Furman.
Mm-hmm.
Because that trial, Johnny Cochran, what was the big issue in that trial with Furman? Whether he used N-word or not.
N-word, yes.
Had nothing to do with the evidence and the trial. But what it did do was it cast him in such a negative light that jury, one of the reasons, they just completely set aside the evidence. They just ignored it. Now, I hope that doesn't happen here. I hope this jury has got enough sense that they do not get distracted by this. I mean, even though he stands up there on the stand and Proctor and he says, it was stupid, it was juvenile, it was unfair, blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you, that rings so hollow that there's not a part. I mean, when I was watching, I was going, you know what? You can't unring that bell, brother. You're done. You can apologize from now to the second coming. It will make no difference. People, that's in terms of an investigation, that's almost an unforgiven sin. So, unforgivable sin. So I just tell you that what I'm hoping for is we've got a jury that's smart enough to see through all the theater, all the drama, and stick to the evidence and let it lead them to where they need to be. And if that means that they come to a guilty verdict, then so be it. But I would say that at this point in time, I don't see anything from the evidence, anything from the witness testimony that would take them off the path to her being the one that did this. And I've said it before, this is what defense attorneys do when the evidence is so overwhelming. This is what they have to do. You attack the investigators and you attack the investigation. And unfortunately, in this case, this investigator has given him all sorts of ammunition.
Very well said, and exactly my thoughts here. By the way, Jojo, hello SCS. It is my birthday, and I'm having a party with the pod going in the background for the guests. Love you guys. All guests, listen up. There's a great book out there called Surviving the Survivor. I don't know if you heard of it. You guys should get a book club going at this party right now. You should read, not be drinking and hanging out and partying. Get a good book, my book, and let me know what you think. But in all seriousness, I was being serious. Jojo, have a great birthday. Happy birthday. I have no idea how old you are. You can never ask a woman her age anyway, but enjoy yourself and be safe. Don't drink and drive like all the law enforcement officers in Canton, Mass on January 28th and the 29th. Scott Duffy. Same thing here. I am overwhelmingly pro law enforcement. We would not be the nation that we are without good people like Fil and Scott who keep the order in this country. But then you've got this guy, and then we're going to move along from here. Don't worry. We're going to get to where we're going in a minute. But and then you get this guy, Trooper Proctor, on the stand, and he's a real misogynist. And look, we know that there is locker room talk amongst law enforcement, but to use the see you next Tuesday word, other really disgusting words. Number one, Scott Duffy, when you were an FBI agent, were you always very careful with your personal phone, thinking, one day this could end up in a courtroom? And number two, do you too feel like he has now given a black eye to all of you? And number three, is he thrown off the trial? In other words, what Scott was saying, Phil was saying, that people aren't even, they're taking their eye off the ball, which is the evidence here because of all the confusion. I don't even remember my three questions, so just answer whatever you'd like.
Happy birthday, JoJo.
Yeah. You should never ask someone three questions and then not remember the three, but go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, so for the phones, absolutely agree with Phil. When I was in the Bureau, we did not have a 2-phone policy, but we had a social media and personal phone policy that just said, stay off your phone. Don't use your phone for anything business-wise. I'm sorry, don't use your phone for anything personal. And so be it, right? You were allowed to use your phone to call family, friends, answer whatever. But we were very cautious to text during, if there was an official operation, whether it be, especially during a surveillance. And so when you have multiple cars, if you're not using the actual radio and you're using your phone, you're texting, of course, you can just go off the rails, talking about everything and anything. And when it's funny, it could be anything under the sun that any two people not expecting their conversations to be in public light, where it's understood, it's in context and so forth. But then when it's displayed on a defense exhibit, it's horrible, and you can't unring that bell. So I totally agree. And now the FBI has moved into, as a result of a couple of high profile cases, but more so with Peter Strzok, our former, who was a high level DAD. So he was a deputy assistant director. And of course, we know how that played out on national TV, and just an embarrassment, right? Throughout every aspect.
Scott Duffy, I must interrupt for one moment. I'm a DAD as well. I'm a dad, and this is Father's Day. I would like to be the first to wish Phil and Scott a happy Father's Day. A happy Father's Day. So
Happy Father's Day, everybody.
I did not mean to interrupt, but we're all DADs. Go ahead, Scott Duffy.
Yes, we have some great acronyms.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and as a result, there's a 2-phone policy, and that is, hey, have a personal phone and have your business phone, and the business phone be strictly for that. And so thereby, as long as you didn't use that personal phone during your official course of duty, it's off limits, right? So, and I've taught that very early on. I teach it in my police recruit classes and so forth, that, hey, if you have a phone, now it's one thing to come across something. You have no official, you could be off duty, on duty. You have absolutely nothing at your fingertips. And if you needed a picture because whatever you're seeing is going to disappear, and thereby you want to capture it, then as a last resort, it'd be like, okay, you have your phone, but be mindful that anything else that's on that phone could easily find its way into the courtroom. So you would think twice. You didn't want, and I would teach, don't start deleting things now, because then it's just gonna look bad. So in that regard, personal phone use, social media, texting, everything, especially today, because the defense attorney has so much more to go after with regards to the investigator. And then anybody that goes on a stand and then has to face that, yes, it's embarrassing. And as Phil said, it basically takes the juror's view away, distracted away from what they're there for. So,
Scott Duffy, there's a question here, not the one on the screen, but Carrie Lassiter says, we'll talk about this for a few minutes and then we'll get into Lisks. Don't you worry. And by the way, Phil and Scott, some people in the chat know where I'm going. You don't, but I've had something happen to me that requires investigative mind. So we'll deal with that at the end of the show. And I've got some illustrations to help you guys along. We'll just leave it at that. So Carrie Laster says, Scott Duffy, I strongly feel that without a doubt, Proctor should be fired. Even the governor weighed in. She didn't say whether he should be fired. She just said it was disgusting and reprehensible. Other than that, she wouldn't comment on the case. But Scott Duffy, should this guy be fired? Is he a black eye, and does he need to go and work as a barista at Starbucks instead of a Massachusetts state trooper?
Yeah, I mean, I won't weigh in on a particular witness being fired from their job as a result. I think we'll see how the case unfolds, et cetera, and how much of an impact anytime a professional, especially a law enforcement witness, gets on the stand and then is much of the case or much of the testimony is having to defend yourself and ultimately stupid actions. So it all comes down to what are the policies that are in place for Massachusetts State Police? What are the punishments in place? For example, it could be I don't know. I think the rank is the rank of lieutenant is
for Proctor.
Yeah,
I don't think he's a lieutenant. I think he's a sergeant, I believe.
Okay. I mean, it's possible demotions. It's an array of things. Ultimately, it comes down to what did you violate that's already in place, and then what are the recourse for the Massachusetts State Police. They will obviously see just how damaging this is for them as an agency going forward, and it will definitely come into play with regards to what this trooper has put him or herself in any time. But ultimately, we do stupid things. And hopefully we all learn when somebody, especially in such a national spotlight, and then hopefully there are other officers that are watching and saying, wow, I was doing those things, so I'll tighten things up, especially if your department doesn't have any type of policy. So it ultimately will come down to what exactly the jury is thinking with regards to this, and then ultimately what are already the rules in place, policies in place, and if there are things in place that says, hey, to the point of demotion, suspension, whatever, it could be a letter of censure, could be a whole rigmarole of things, and that's ultimately, the department's going to have to decide, and I imagine a very strong union will be in place to defend any type of pursuit of firing.
Phil Waters, before I get to the question on screen, they want to know, Reese's mom, this is a super chat. Phil, if you, the GOAT of detectives, were investigating a dead body at a house, would you not want to go into the house? Obviously, there's a lot of contention about this point. Proctor never had what he thought was probable cause to go into the home. He didn't think he needed to. Before we get to this question, however, your children are adult children. Do they call you to wish you a happy Father's Day? Do they all call to wish you that? Or does it get to a point? I would call my father even now if he was still with us. But do they call you? I know it's a personal question, Phil. You don't have to answer it. But when they get into the 20s and 30s, I won't be around when my kids are in their 30s, I don't think. But for you, do they call you and say, Dad, happy Father's Day?
Yes.
It's beautiful. I didn't expect anything else. You don't, you just accept it. You don't say, you don't have follow-up questions for them, do you, Phil, after they ask you a question? You do not interrogate them, in other words.
When they wish me Father's Day?
Yes, you do not say something like, where were you last evening? How long were you there for?
No.
You just say thank you.
I just am very, very blessed to have them as children, and very thankful that they call me and wish me a happy Father's Day and tell me they love me.
There you go.
I love them. So, no, I don't get into any kind of into the weeds about it.
My kids who are inundated with Ferraris here and now Cybertrucks that have invaded Miami, I tell them that the only wealth you need is the love of your family, Phil Waters, and maybe a few extra zeros in your bank account. Reese's mom, Phil, if you were investigating, we haven't even gotten to the list, the Long Island serial killer, but this Karen Reed case is, I was literally just going to ask the question. Happy Father's Day to all the STS dads out there. Thank you, whoever that, I think that was Gen X Granny. But Phil, would you have gone into the house that night? I know it's a would have, could have, should have, and it's all hindsight, but your thoughts, because this is a big question.
Well, I will talk in a general way that it would depend on the scene. If there's any reason for me to think that I need to get access to the residence in which this body is laying in front of, that would be borne out by the investigation there at the scene. And was this just a place? I had a scene where I had a body laying in front of a house, laying in the driveway, and where the body was had nothing to do about what happened to that person. So I'm just going to tell you, I'm not going to get into the weeds about this particular case because I wasn't there and I don't know, other than what we've seen and heard. Those detectives at the moment and that point in time, there was no reason to go in and conduct a search in that house, whether it was either by a consent to search or a search warrant. So, people can take that for whatever they want. I don't really care. I'm just saying that you don't take one case in a vacuum and go, oh, yeah, you're going to do that for every case, because that's just not the way it works. That's not the reality of things. And their explanation of why they didn't go in and search the house, to me, sounds completely reasonable because I've been in that situation before. So I don't see anything underhanded or strange about the fact that they didn't go in and search the house. And this business about didn't have probable cause and all that stuff. I mean, people are just picking up on words they hear in the criminal justice system and on true crime stuff and all that probable cause. Look, if I had any investigative instinct at a scene that the house itself, the residence, was going to be somehow attached to what was outside, then the first thing I would have done was ask for a consent to search. And if that was denied, if I had the probable cause to put together a search warrant, then I would lock it down, secure it, and I would go get a search warrant. Sometimes I would get a search warrant, even if I had a consent. So you just answering that question about that particular scene. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm just saying that they made a decision at the time. There was nothing leading them into that house, into the interior of that house, to conduct a search. And I don't find anything unusual or suspicious about it.
Analytical Blarney AB with perhaps the most important question of the day. She's referring to you as Mac Daddy Phil. I like that. On a scale of 1 to 100, how many Hawaiian shirts do you own? In your best guesstimate, this is where your accuracy matters. Is it 97 shirts or closer to 11 or somewhere in the middle?
Kind of a split there, around 50. I probably get around 50 of them.
50.
Yeah.
Wow. And is this an obsession now? Now we have to analyze this a little bit. Are they?
It's an obsession. It's something I enjoy. I've been buying Aloha shirts for 30-something years. So,
Are they all in one closet in the home that you are in?
Yes.
Interesting. Are they colored?
Half of them, about half of them are in Texas, and then the other half's hanging right here.
Look at this. A new Ned Smith. Is she sharp? I love Ned Smith. Hawaii 5-0. There you go.
I was watching the real Hawaii 5-0 right before I came downstairs here. Steve McGarrett was working undercover and on Wo Fat, which was his great nemesis in that show. So yeah.
Phil, someone like myself wants to know, are your shirts color coordinated? In other words, are all the blues together, the creams, the reds that you're wearing, are they color coordinated in the closet? My guess is yes.
No, they're not. They are in the order in which I wear them. That gives me a variety, and when I wear like this one, we'll go into the closet at the end of the line, and we move forward.
Amazing. And someone wanted to know, not your address, but where on the Big Island are you? They wanted to know.
Go ahead, give your address. It's okay.
Yeah, exact address.
Oh my gosh. I am in the northern part of the Big Island in Kohala.
Scott Duffy, I have a question for you because Julie Ricord here says Scott is definitely a rule follower. Was it always, Scott Duffy, if I went back to 9th grade, to your high school freshman year, would your teachers say that you were a bit of a wild kid? I bet you were. These FBI agents. Were you a strong student? Did you care about school, or were you, I don't know, more of the class clown type?
Let me see. I think in the 8th grade, I was voted class clown. Yeah. And then, and so school was always a struggle for me. And then, but in high school, I got with it. So high school seemed to fit well. So I got a little better.
There you go. There you go. I feel like a lot of the law enforcement officers I know from back in the day, they were like the class clown types. They would joke around. They were the kind of guys that would dive head first on the pavement during kickball into the pavement. Look at this. This is getting really emotional. We haven't even gotten to Rex Heuermann, and we're 30 minutes in. Scott, they want to know one of your fathers. Do you have a favorite father? Let me tell you my beef with Father's Day before we get to forget Scott for a minute. And I was talking about this earlier. Summer break started like a week ago. So for Mother's Day, like the kids go to school, the teachers have them do all these intricate projects. They get the fathers don't get anything because now the kids are off for the summer. They don't care. I probably won't even get a card. It bums Vita. If you're watching, you better make a card. But Scott, do you have a Father's Day memory or traditions? Any traditions?
So I would ask the question as it starts to thunder here. So just in case,
Scott disappears, we know why. Yeah.
No, more so for my dog. So she's just come up close to me. So, well, so I guess the question is it as for me as a father or me growing up? So I'm not sure, but I'll answer both because growing up, my good dad died many years ago. So 50 years ago.
Whoa.
I was a tiny. So really no memories there. For for now, really, I just enjoy where we all go to church and we all have a nice dinner. This weekend, everybody's going to be a little bit scattered, so we had a nice little celebration before the show. Good dinner, and then we'll see what the weekend brings. But yeah, typically it's just a couple of things done together. I'll probably do a barbecue tomorrow night.
Very nice.
Very low key.
Hopefully it doesn't rain. Final Karen Reed question here, which is an interesting one, which is why I'm bringing it up. But I'll give this to Scott, and then we'll move on to Rex here. Scott, how can we believe the state police conspired to frame Karen Reed in one breath, but in the next breath, you see how incompetent they are with the investigation itself? Interesting point. And there had to be many people involved in the conspiracy. I don't see the conspiracy, but I don't know how strong, and the evidence is still playing out on the car strike possibility. But what about that? We talked about it before, Scott. The bigger question is, it's really hard to get a conspiracy of so many people, is it not? As the hate mail starts to flow.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak in general terms because this has me confused. So that's why, as you can see, I'll tiptoe a little bit around it. I am confused on this case, so that's why I don't express public opinions on it. I probably am pretty open to a variety of possibilities here. So I'll just let the jury and the powers that be, handle this case. But I will say for that very question, yeah, and this is ultimately what jurors come down to. The jurors are not checking their common sense at the door when they go into that courtroom. They are listening to the evidence, and that evidence as it's presented through witnesses, and they determine the credibility of those witnesses, right? So if a witness comes off so bad, they're allowed to check all or a piece of the testimony, right? And ultimately, they will return to the jury room after everything has been presented, and collectively, with their common sense, say, what do we believe took place, and ultimately, did the prosecution put together a good case? And that is above. Prosecutors know that they don't always have perfect witnesses, and that's not just with regards to a law enforcement officer. How many times that I've had convicted felons who make a decision to put everything else they've done in their past aside and work with prosecution, right? Work with the investigators. I believe them because the evidence corroborates that. But they could be a murderer, they could be a thief, they could be a liar, whatever it is. And ultimately, the jury still has to say, do we believe that person that day? And that's what it's going to come down to. So, yes, I think there are many people who are confused by sometimes the what may seem to be incompetent on the part of some of these investigators. But ultimately, I'm generally against conspiracy defenses, and because you have to say everybody and anybody is involved, and that's a tall order. That's a very, very tall order.
Sunny Sky, perhaps the most important question of the day. Are Phil shirts really important to discuss? Yes, 100%. This is the fabric of our Friday show. It's the most important thing to discuss here. And I'm glad we found out it is roughly 50 shirts. And they don't go in color order. They go in the order of which they wear them. So roughly 50 days from now, you will see the same shirt that Phil is wearing now, is what I've learned. Are we talking about the crime or somebody's Hawaiian shirts? Both. They're not mutually exclusive. For those new to Fridays, you're going to have to either get on the bandwagon or get off the bandwagon, because there's no change in our Fridays here, no matter what. Space Coast on the West Coast. He handles all things audio and many more things. I was the class clown, but also the top of my class. So one thing to know about Space Coast, his IQ is ridiculously high. His sister, my wife's IQ, is ridiculously high, even though you wouldn't know it, because we'll get into some details about some of her less than intelligent choices over the last couple of days. That's what I'm going to be talking to Scott and Phil about towards the end of the show today. So I don't want to, kind of blow the surprise. But Space Coast, without a doubt, one of the smarter people that I know. And he has reached the epitome of success in his life because he's working for Surviving the Survivor, perhaps the greatest show ever created by man or womankind. So he's on the right path for sure. No doubt about that. Okay, moving on to Misdemeanor OG. I'm with you. I met Misdemeanor OG from Long Island, Strong Island. That's where we're headed next. Phil Waters, she's awesome, by the way. She tells it like it is and takes no prisoners. I never do this, so I'm going to start to do it. If you like the show and you love Fridays, please subscribe. And please, as the kids say, smash that like button. I'm going to have to get, by the way, with Space Ghost. We should have like a smash the like button animation. We should have all kinds of little things going on that Space Coast, whatever, and Steve Cohen and COE and the mods and I should discuss. Anyway, moving on. So, Phil Waters, you know him well because you've seen video of him before, as does Scott Duffy. John Ray, he's kind of the eccentric attorney who represents some of the families of the Gilgo Beach murder victims who he alleges were killed by Rex Heuermann. Anyway, he held a press conference this week, and he happens to represent Shannon Gilbert and Jessica Taylor's families. It is important to note here that no official law enforcement officers were present at this case. But let me just play a clip. Let's start here. We'll watch a clip. Basically, what he is now alleging, and this was wild, is that he believes the family of Rex Heuermann, specifically the daughter Victoria, may be involved along with the mother, Asa Ellerup, in some manner or fashion. So here's the first clip. The COE has pulled some. I'm going to bring it up here. I have no idea what this is, by the way, in terms of the content, because the COE just pulled it. But I've got some gaps to fill in afterwards. Here we go. Let's watch together, and we'll get Phil Waters and Scott Duffy's reaction.
That she was looking at of ball gags with blood all over the face of the person who has it. They were both interested in ball gags. Medieval torture of women speaks for itself. Long Island mistress BDSM. We also know all these pictures speaks for themselves as BDSM, and we know that Heuermann spent time, we know now, in Manhattan clubs in BDSM situations. For example, a place called Pandora's Box. When you take all of these things collectively, are you going to be able to reasonably say, well, just circumstantial evidence? Who knows whether the mother really knew what was going on in the house? Who knows whether Mr. Heuermann had anything to do with what happened to his daughter? You can take one inference is that this poor girl was brought up in this sickness. And don't think for 1 minute, from what you now know, that Rex Heuermann was cutting people up, removing their hands and heads and so on, just so that he could avoid identification. That isn't even true. We know he left the tattoos on, he sliced them up. He knew very well he could have just cut them off, and he didn't. He's not caring too much about identification, although he is that too. He's enjoying what he's doing. Look at what he is reading, what his daughter is reading, what they're observing. It's BDSM to the max. And it's demonic. How else do you describe it? This house, are you surprised at the way it looked? It matches the demonic life that they're living there. Why do you think they haven't left after they know that murdered bodies were in that home?
I'm going to leave John Ray up there mainly because I like his ponytail that you can't really see in his suit. So let me fill in some of the gaps here, Phil Waters and Scott Duffy. So John Ray, in this press conference, in so many words, accused the alleged serial killer's daughter, that is Victoria Heuermann, of posting disturbing images to social media. She was on a site called Tumblr, and she had these very intricate drawings. They're very disturbing, so we're being careful, I think, about what we present to you. But he said that she had a penchant for sadistic artwork that depict scenes, Phil Waters, similar to how the women on Long Island died. Art very similar to the murders. Gary Bricado is there. He's with the Cold Case Foundation. Again, no official law enforcement officers, but Gary Bricado is one of the most respected forensic psychologists in America, arguably. He studied serial killers for a very long time, and we're going to hear from him in a moment. But Phil Waters, broadly speaking, this now is coming out of left field. Since we've been covering Lisks, we've asked, is it possible that Asa was involved or knew about it? But now from these drawings, they're really not showing, and I'm tempted to show some of them. But these are, figures who have been decapitated or delimbed, if you will. Phil Waters, if you discover this in your investigation about a daughter, what does this tell you from an investigative standpoint? Does this change the playing field now?
Well, before I answer this question, let me say this. I think these kind of press conferences are ridiculous. In my view, the family's attorney, I know why he's doing it, because he gets his face on a camera and he gets some FaceTime up there and he used to say all this stuff. It does not further or assist in the investigation. Okay. So further on down the line, again, it may affect or nullify a jury. I'm just saying that these kinds of press conferences, in my view, are ridiculous.
But Phil, let me ask you a quick question, because what about the fact that no one seemed to know or have information that the daughter was creating? How should that information have been delivered? Should this attorney have gone just directly to law enforcement quietly and not held a press conference?
Well, my comment to that would be, how do we know they don't know?
Okay. Fair comment.
So I'm just saying that him getting out there and Of course, there's no law enforcement represented here.
Mhm.
They're not going to show up to this clown show. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Mhm.
And it would give only credibility to what he's saying. And if what he is saying compromises that investigation in some way, then he ought to be ashamed of himself, in my view. So we don't know what the investigators know or don't know. And in terms of answering your question, I don't think it changes anything. It just adds to it. So there's no telling when this thing is finally concluded how far this is going to reach. So if we assume that what he is saying is even halfway accurate, it doesn't surprise me. And it's just adding more pieces to this huge, huge puzzle. But again, having said that, the whole press conference to me is unnecessary.
It's a fair point. I'll make the argument that, once it's out there, it's newsworthy, because the genie's out of the bottle at that point.
That may be the case in terms of a journalist perspective and a case of people that think that they have a right to know. But let me tell you what, we don't have a right to know everything all the time at every moment. And if it goes to affecting the greater good or the outcome, then that's a complete idiotic philosophy to have.
I'm with you on that. I mean, I think what you're saying, if this is going to jeopardize the jury, then yeah, it's very problematic.
Well, it's going to jeopardize the investigation.
Yeah.
I mean, in some way, shape, or form. I mean, he's already up there screaming about, this is circumstantial. You know what? I mean, again, we don't need to know everything. We don't have a right to know everything. And it will come out at the moment that it needs to come out. But this kind of stuff here, I find it rather reprehensible.
So we'll circle back to Phil. Scott Duffy, I think it's probably a good time to just segue over to Scott. Oh boy. So Scott Duffy, we're going to listen to another piece of sound in a moment. John Ray basically held up a drawing, and this is his direct quote. We're not going to show the drawing, but he says, "This appears to be the remains of a human being that looks half eaten." And it was from Victoria Heuermann's Tumblr blog from her LinkedIn page. I don't know how Tumblr and LinkedIn kind of intertwine here, but he said and showed a series of these sadistic images that she created herself, that they were drawn by her, and as well as artwork by others that she would post to this social media site. And then he compared these images that she was making to the alleged Gilgo beach murders. And there were very eerie similarities in terms of the body parts that were dismembered and other sort of cannibalistic fantasies that have been out in the public. So, I mean, Scott, question to you. What do we do about the fact that these have been proven to be her drawings? Again, we're not showing them because they're really disturbing, but that, and she was, I believe, obviously younger at the point. I mean, when these murders happened, she was not an adult woman as she is now. What do you make of the fact, though, that none of us are psychologists. What I'm trying to figure out is, number one, how would she know things so comparable to what was now found at Gilgo Beach, and why is she drawing them? Like, what was really going on here? Is that something you'd be curious from an investigative? How curious would you be from an investigative standpoint about why she knew this information and was drawing these things?
Yeah, as that information is coming out and then hearing it today, yes, from an investigator's point of view, especially if this comes out later or during the investigation, it would cause me as an investigator to say, okay, we should be looking over here and get an answer. I mean, a direct interview would be important, right? So as an investigator, you want to know everything that's happening to put together this puzzle. But I would also throw in the mix here, especially because, you know, if the first homicide that's on record for this case is 1993, right? That's
Yes,
going
now it
many
is
years
correct.
back.
And
My
it's this woman, by the way. We should Sandra Costilla. And this is what through the timeline or broadened it so much more back to
yeah,
93. These are the latest two indictments for these two women.
and I say that, Joel, for the sake that, for argument's sake here, Rex is charged. Rex, a digital forensic, pulls up additional pieces of information, evidence to further, combined with the porn, etc., and the very type of porn. So you have pretty much playing into the pattern of what behavioral sciences do for a living. They study these individuals, that it is a fantasy play. And where does the fantasy come from? Does it come out of thin air, or is it coming from, there's all sorts of pornography, right? That's out there. And so thereby, their pornography may have very well been in place for years leading up to, or at some point leading up to the point that the fantasy takes real life, and then to start executing murders. Is it possible that he is sloppy in the beginning, and as probably even before the internet and so forth, where if he is fantasizing and is collecting these magazines or whatever, paper clippings or anything of a pornography in a paper format, non-digital format, that the kids have seen something, and so thereby she sees something of his that he's left laying around, and thereby it just kind of plays into her mind, and their images that he laid bare for his daughter to have, and so thereby, kind of as a young childhood, it just kind of grows into this unknown. You know, what is a child to do with such amazingly disgusting imagery for an adult? And so she puts it into the back of her head, but then it comes out later, and so it may have absolutely no connection whatsoever to Rex's play as a serial murderer, but the fact that now she has seen things that she shouldn't have seen as a child growing up in this home, that then these whatever thoughts, drawings that going to come out in some weird way in her social media. That's a possibility. As so I'm, you know, to make the jump, everybody's involved, and then to go out in this press conference. Yeah, I would agree. It's a danger. There's no need for it. But I would venture to say it may make more of a victim of what the children have seen growing up. Because maybe he gets better later, but early on, I believe he's sloppy. And that being with the pornography that's in and around the house for young people to see.
And the son has got some developmental disabilities. You know, they didn't mention the son at all. Embrace Smith here says, I think the press conference, and this is very kind of my journalism background, in my opinion, if it's out there, it can be discussed. I'm not going to show the graphic nature of the photos. Phil wants to smack me in the face. I think the press conference was very necessary to alert people of this family of demons. John Ray, to me, is amazing. He's keeping his word to Shannon and Jessica's family. John Ray. Kay Cimentel here says she was 13 when the 2010 murders took place. T. Duclos. Right after that, I was told the police were invited to the press conference. Obviously, they opted out of that. Maggie Lusk here says, and I know Dr. Bricado myself, and I'm going to invite him on the show to discuss this. He's doing stuff with the Cold Case Foundation, so I don't even know if he's at liberty to do other shows at this point. And by the way, I need to reach out to Ann Burgess because she's got a new show about her out on the Hulu. But Maggie says Dr. Bricado has been friends with John Ray for years, and he knows what he's talking about. So according to John Ray, she erased photos that she had put up on social media and took them down. And John Ray claims that Victoria, through these photos, is telling a story of the entire family, not just Rex Heuermann. He said that she had, quote unquote, appeared innocent in situations with the press, but that the way she portrays herself on the internet is completely different, according to John Ray. And then even went on to say that after the first indictment, I thought this was an interesting observation at the very least. At the very first indictment, when Rex Heuermann was first indicted, she was wearing a shirt with a skeleton on it. And he says, this is a direct quote, Victoria's true self is a very different self. These people did not tell the truth. They are misleading us. So this is the attorney. With that said, what is this, COE? Let's play this piece of sound, COE. I don't know what this is. That's Gary Bricado on the left.
The evidence that we have suggests that we've been sold a story by the Heuermann family. Take a look at the first page and the picture that's to the right. That's Victoria Heuermann as she tried to appear to the press when you first confronted her at the home in Massapequa Park. There she is in her little girl's uniform. She's 27 years old with a school bag draped over her, her hair in a nice little bun. Very innocent looking person. The other picture is also Victoria Heuermann, as she really is, as she portrays herself on the internet, as she actually looks. We've been sold a bill of goods. If you look at her artwork, in the top page, her artwork consists that she posted online of a human skull. That's just the beginning. After the indictments, oddly enough, and you folks took the picture, you see Victoria Heuermann walking out, I believe from her house. And I thought it was odd when I saw it. But you'll notice she's wearing a shirt that depicts, right after her father is indicted, for these murdered women, it depicts a human skeleton. That's what she's wearing. I'm going to show you what she's looking at on the internet. And please, do not indulge in moral posturing that I am merely shaming her, who is also a victim of sorts. And she is a victim for sure of her family.
Phil, I'm not going to have him show those. You're shaking your head. So he just said she's a victim of her family. This is a really interesting kind of predicament here because she's an adult, but she was a child during part of this. But she's obviously impacted. I mean, it does not take a rocket scientist or psychologist to figure it out. I know you are super annoyed with this guy for trying to get his mug on the camera. But how do you square this? I mean, because this could be very important. Yet she was a child, at least when he started. She's an adult now. How should this be handled? Just by investigators quietly?
Well, Joel, look, I'm reticent to discuss this based on this guy's press conference because we don't know the context with which all this stuff he's putting out there, all this stuff he wants to put out there to prove some sort of point, like how wonderful he is in exposing all this or whatever. I'm sorry. The whole thing to me is salacious. I think he's trying to try this in the public square before it even gets to that point. I'm not, and he's bringing up all these things. He's talking out of both sides of his mouth, and I you know what? I think what he's doing is wrong. I think he's wrong, and I'm not trying to be hard headed here, but I'm not gonna. No, I really don't want to engage in a conversation about anything that he's saying because I disagree with the whole premise of what he's doing.
I hear you on that, and I kind of respect you and agree with you. Let's let Gary Bricado is, I would call him a friend and acquaintance. He's with the Cold Case Foundation. I'm going to play a bite from him, and then we will.
Well, I met Gary. We met Gary at Crime Con.
Yeah, you met Gary. He's a very well-respected scholar. So.
Yeah, well, he and I had some interesting discussions, but I'll leave that between he and I. But
all right. Well, let's see what he says here. Because to be honest, I did not see this press conference when it happened just yesterday. By the way, it was an impromptu conference. Here we go. This is Gary.
Begin my comments by saying that it is important that we dedicate everything we're doing today to the victims. I think it's very important to do that, to remember that we're not interested in the titillating details of what an offender has done, as much as trying to prevent those horrible things from happening in the future by understanding these people. I think it's also important to mention that I have not examined Mr. Heuermann, his daughter, his wife, or any other member of the family. And the comments I'm going to make are general about the trends in these kinds of offenders and what we might be able to gauge about someone who may be potentially joining the ranks of that type of individual here. First of all, when people are charged with offenses, repeat murder, you don't get hauled into court, under a charge of serial killing, right? But it is important to understand when there is a pattern of serial killing that is alleged, we can learn a great deal about what the likely motive is of the individual and understand a lot about the individual's psychology. The vast majority of people who meet criteria for serial killing are sexually motivated. And I want you to understand that we have to envision a circle in which there are individuals that repetitively commit sexual assault against other individuals, but don't kill. Within that circle is a smaller group of individuals who are sadistic toward the individuals that they're assaulting, brutalizing them in every imaginable way, but do not kill them. Within that circle is a smaller group that proceed to actually kill the individuals, sometimes to get rid of witnesses, sometimes because the force is too much and someone passes away, and sometimes because this now becomes part of the thrill. But within that circle is the rarest of all, which is a sexually sadistic serial killer who kills after protracted, prolonged torture in every imaginable way. And it is in that tiny circle that we would be placing Mr. Heuermann if he is indeed guilty.
Scott Duffy, I mean, this is more of the psychological behavior of serial killers, not pointing a finger at the family per se. But he says that Heuermann would be among the worst because of this, according to him. And again, I mean, Phil makes a really good point. They don't know what the investigators know, but he's saying that these were protracted tortures, which brings you to another level of serial killing. At the very least, you find it interesting to hear Gary talk about sort of the different behaviors of these serial killers.
Yeah, and I would agree. I've met Gary Bricado, so I don't really know his work all that much, but I would I believe his reputation precedes him with regards to his expertise and connections to the good work that he does. But I'll make a statement on this. Why? So it's one thing to do podcasts, true crime podcasts, right? Shows that give, Phil and I and you, we give our opinions based upon our experiences. We don't cast judgment. We basically give our opinions and then give judgments based upon the way we would have walked a particular investigation. With regards to this, a press conference, I'm just not sure the reason why. What's the motivation?
Well, there's a real quick, Scott. So CZ has this comment. It's interesting now. It's getting a little heavy for a Friday, but I highly encourage you to watch the full press conference, which I did not, and feels like screw this. Many revelations made. They're trying to find other victims, people that had encounters with Rex Heuermann, etc., because they believe there are many more victims. But I mean, I'm kind of with Phil on this by pointing the finger at Victoria. Scott, how does that really help do that?
Yeah, no, even just from the clips, just from that alone, it's too much information. It's not like they're giving information and then there's a victim cowered in the corner to say, "Oh my gosh, that's me." You can absolutely, and law enforcement does this all the time. We've arrested this person. This person is responsible for these, we believe, for these crimes based upon the probable cause affidavit. If you've heard of him, know him, see him by any other name, any other association, whether you're a dancer, whether you're a street worker, sex worker, prostitute, whatever be the word or title of the day, now is your time to come forward anonymously or however which way. Those are the proper ways of seeking out victims to then bolster your case. It's done in many child sexual assault cases. A teacher is arrested or whatever, somebody who's in a coach, and then you have other students and so forth and so forth. But you don't get down into the nitty gritty, salacious explanations of what this teacher, though this person has done, and then expect people to come out. So I'm equally confused, and I would agree. So just in that snippet, I think Phil and I, we weigh people upon what they say. You can't say, "I'm not here to promote this, I'm here to promote that," but then at the same time be part of the very promotion. It's contradictory. It doesn't lend anything to the investigation. And being a very good attorney, John Ray, in the sense of promoting victims and representing the victims' families, kudos for all that. And you could quietly be that muscle, if especially as we know early in this investigation, there were definitely missteps and cover-ups and law enforcement corruption that prevented this from being resulting into the arrest of Rex years ago, right? And that's being dealt with internally, but that wrong was righted by a new prosecutor on board, putting together a new task force and said, let's get this solved once and for all by the evidence, right? And so you moved forward with that, and I totally agree. Law enforcement couldn't be a part of that press conference. It doesn't do anything while this is still waiting to be prosecuted. It, if anything, could be a jeopardy. For example, taking it out of the venue of an area that limits the prosecution to move forward. Anything that could be a jeopardy to the actual prosecution, to me, then hurts the victims in the long run. And ultimately, you want to have a Netflix special down the road, by all means, but that I think just is bad timing. And to point the finger at a daughter who, and I'm looking at the comments, could be a victim of circumstance, does nothing to help anybody.
Well said. JD here says it was reckless and unfounded. I cannot figure out why John Ray feels it necessary to go down this scathing road. It just detracts from the good that he's done. Catch Lisk here. Thank you for saying he's wrong. He certainly is. So he's taken some heat, obviously. How about leaving things up to law enforcement and not messing with the justice process? I mean, in fairness to John Ray, he probably thinks he is part of the justice process and helping. There is one other soundbite, and then we'll bounce off of this. This is another one from Gary Bricado. He's interesting to me. He talks more in kind of a scholarly fashion, but let's just see. Justice for Victoria here from Greg Montbello. I'm very conflicted about how I feel about this, because if what he is saying is true, then I'm sure she does need to be looked at. But then again, you know, she was a child, so it's during part of this, not all of it. So it's very sensitive waters. Let's put it that way. Here's the other Gary bite, and then we'll bounce off of this. Here we go.
It is important to understand that individuals like that are motivated partially by sadism and partially by a kind of intellectual boredom, a stimulation. People of that type, for example, can look at all kinds of things and collect all kinds of things and do all kinds of things to keep it interesting for themselves. And as a consequence, evolve and do all manner of things to their victims to learn about what happens to bodies, to see what causes the greatest thrill. Now, regarding the things that have been spoken about today, it is important to understand that about 80%, it is estimated, of serial killers operate alone. But that leaves, by some estimates, 20% that do operate with other people.
That's a very interesting point. Serial killers operate alone, Phil Waters. I'll play out the rest, but he says 20% operate in groups. And I think the subtle implication is that maybe he was acting with members of his family. Your reaction to this part of it, and I'll play the rest.
Well, here's what I'll say about Gary.
Mm.
Had he been discussing what he's discussed, what we've heard him say right now, zone setting, no problem. I think it would have been great. It would have educated people to the overall personality types and the overall atmosphere that surrounds these people that engage in serial killings. But he put himself with this other guy, and everything he's saying now is if we were in Vegas, it's a push. All the damage has been done with the attorney coming out and all of that stuff that he's putting out there. So Gary stepping in behind him, he's giving us his perspective, and he said it at the beginning. He was not going to comment specific to what Ray had just talked about. So he's doing great here with what he's explaining. I just wish he would have done this apart, separate from this goofy press conference. So
yeah, I understand that.
Hitching himself to this attorney's.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is we're almost through it, and then we're going to move on. But from Harley Rider here, and Phil is a Harley Rider. It's weird, it's creepy, but it is not illegal to draw dark pictures. That's true. As a matter of fact, it's a form of therapy, which I don't know much about, but people do. It's cathartic for some people to draw these photos. Ray should have waited for law enforcement to release or not to release. Scott Duffy, here's the rest of what Bricado said in this portion of the press conference.
That can be a group of people that are all interested in the same perversions. That can be a wife or a partner, significant other. That can be one's own child. In that small circle of cases, which incidentally do not include any in the state of New York that I'm aware of prior to this, where an individual actually has what may be a torture chamber or an isolated place where individuals are brought.
So kind of clipped off abruptly there. But Scott Duffy, after the fact that he says 20% of serial killers operate in groups, he went on to say that sometimes it could be the wife, it could be the children. Again, with no real substantiation here. But it's interesting. I honestly never knew that serial killers operated 20. It's a fifth of all serial killers, he's saying. operate in groups. I'm with Phil in that leave it up to the investigators. But there's going to be a lot of people out there, Scott, who say, just look at what's going on in the Karen Reed case. Don't always leave it up to investigators. You need these quote unquote whistleblower attorneys. Your former law enforcement, Abby Tahaha, Phil's daughter. I'm a Phil fan. I mean, what do you think? What do you think? I mean, if the attorney has this information, should he still have waited, in your opinion, for law enforcement to go through the process here and vet it all out?
I think the only problem I have, whether it be snippets or the whole thing, is the venue. I'm just not sure why it has to be in this display with a press conference. I'm just confused by that. And I say that with everything that Phil has said, and I had noted that this is absolutely a classroom exercise. It's there's fascinating work that should be told, and you can tell this to future forensic doctors, anybody else interested in this particular field. They are experts in their field, and I'm not negating anything that they're saying. However, I'm confused by the why or the motive, and I see, hey, sure, law enforcement can't reach out to everybody, so let this attorney and any other individual who can reach to those potential victims. But I didn't get that message. I didn't get that message that we're seeking a few more victims that may be out there who are afraid to come forward. I didn't see that. I didn't. And so if I'm confused, then how many other people would be confused? Sure, you're educated. It is interesting, but I'm not quite sure. And you're not talking generally. This looks like this is a targeting the daughter, and where do you go from there? I'm not sure what you do to get the whole world behind you, to get law enforcement to say, okay, we'll lock her up. I'm confused by maybe just the whole reasoning behind the press conference. But take that to a classroom, sure.
I think we can all.
Let me say something about this thing at the end where they say more victims come forward stuff.
Yeah.
The other side of this coin is because of the press conference, the manner in which it was held, and the detail that was given, I would not be surprised if there are some people out, and it's just my speculation, that there are some people out there that might be less to come forward, less prompted to come forward. That might be more hesitant because of this, because they don't want their business put on the street like he's doing this now.
Yeah. Well, this is the question, Phil, right here from Pharaoh Gamma. How does this impede the investigation into Rex Heuermann? I think Phil's answering the question right now.
Well, to answer that question, we have no idea. We have no idea. But I'm going to err on the side of caution. I'm just saying that I'm like Scott. I don't know what was gained by this, other than to get some FaceTime in front of a camera. And I'm a little surprised that Gary got involved in this. But
yeah,
he should, if he'd have made those points under another venue that Scott's talked about, I think it'd be great. But this press conference, that was nothing but a freaking melodramatic promotion of the people that put it on.
Yeah, so there's a split here. John Ray here, TJ says, is the one that busted this case wide open and led I mean, he's been pressuring people a long time, but maybe who knows? Maybe he crossed a line here? Autism GMA ×3 here says I think Gary is just trying to help sort it out, and I think Phil and Scott are right. Like if Gary did it in a classroom setting or a different setting or on the campus of John Jay Criminal Justice or something, without him, maybe it would have been received better. But there is a notion here that it is kind of guilt by association with the family, and we just don't know, I don't think. But I think we can all agree. I honestly got the most out of Dr. Gary and his explanation of the circles. I believe people unaware should be made aware of the danger of the Heuermann family writ large. Well, there you go. But I think we can all agree here that we want this, all the victims in this case to be accounted for, the investigation to be led properly. There's been a lot of issues with this investigation up to this point, and it should be about the victims. It should be about these women right here. These are the Gilgo 4, and then the latest two who are part of the indictment, and that is the two on the far right at the top, Jessica Taylor and Sandra Costilla. So it's hell for their families. COE has this up that they did ask for victims, et cetera, et cetera. That's a wrap on the Lisks side of things. If you're not depressed yet on this Friday, I don't know where you live, but it's been raining for a full week in Miami. There we go. On to more pleasant things. Analytical Blarney AB. Scott, we need to know, are you a dancer? I just saw on social media in Miami a couple doing the salsa in the middle of the torrential flooding and rain. It was quite amusing. Scott Duffy, do you know how to salsa? Do you dance, Scott?
Salsa is not one of them, though I would admit that I definitely would have loved to have learned more of the ballroom dancing and whatnot. But yes, in high school, I won't get into the nickname, but I was a bit of a break dancer.
Tell me the nickname. I need to know. Can you share? If you don't want to do it publicly, you can text me. I need to know this. So you were a break dancer back in the day. That's amazing. Yeah. What was your move? I don't know
if that's an answer to the question. I didn't know if maybe it was more of am I some other type of dancer? It's quite a bit.
Hold on, I can't get past the break dancing. Did you wear like parachute pants like MC Hammer in high school?
I don't know if I should answer that. So I've had a pair or two, but I didn't wear them in high school because I went to a Catholic high school where we were mandated to wear uniforms. So a good suit, khaki pants, tie. Really? But the parachute pants did find their way once in a couple. As a matter of fact, living close to New York, just talking about a different age and eras, I would go to some of the clubs in New York with some friends. I look back and I was like, man, I don't think I would do that today. But
this is blowing my mind right now. So were you like a big hip hop guy in the 80s growing up? Were you listening to like Run DMC and these guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Any one of them. Yep.
Really? I'm speechless. I can't even. I don't think it's a hunch. I don't think Phil Waters is a huge fan of either rap or breakdancing. But what was your go-to move when it came to breakdancing? You could like bust the worm, I remember.
Yeah, definitely the worm. And I know things have, changed their names, but it a lot of robotic moves. And this was even into my early days in policing or FOP parties that I would get out there. My wife would find her way, she'd be like, I'm not going to stand next to this.
Is there?
You knocked yourself off there, Joel.
Yeah. Is there any video of this or photos that
you know what? I don't know. I haven't seen any. I don't know if people out there, I really don't know. Nobody's ever sent me anything. A lot of this was really before Well, let me see. I did a little bit of breakdancing on my wedding day.
Really?
But I
This
don't
is
know if there's video of it.
Catherine says it's always the quiet
The
ones. This
moonwalk,
is
yeah.
true.
Yeah, so Michael Jackson, that I would say I've perfected in my way the moonwalk. It was you have to have the right shoes.
Phil has just lost all respect for Scott. It's over. The bromance is over.
It's going back.
Space Ghost wants to know if you can still bust a move.
I could bust something else. So
Black Widow wants to know how much were Phil's best shoes. Not sure what that means, but Phil, are you a big shoe man? Are you a big shoe guy? Will you drop a Ferrari amount of money on a nice pair of shoes? Is that important to you?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm a shoe guy. I do wear Cole Haans and Wolf Shepherds, but I don't know if that means anything to anybody.
Yeah.
But
It does to me.
of course, over here I wear, slippers. So
slippers.
Yeah, look at this. Lee in Maine. Always enjoy hearing and reading everyone's opinions. This is why I really enjoy STS. So we're one big happy family on Fridays.
Love
Rest
them
of the
all.
week, we're Scott, you better send me a photo of you like high school years. I need to see that. I mean, did you have
Yeah.
long hair in high school?
No.
You
No,
didn't?
like I said, I went to a Catholic school for high school, public school up to 8th grade. But
Did you ever have long
only
hair at
like
any
short
point?
hair. I've always had short hair.
Really?
Yeah.
S. Ray says, Joel, you're being punked. It's possible. It's
Possible.
For those who are not depressed on this Friday and have not endured a horrible week as I have, let me depress everyone. On a serious note, very serious note, it was 12 years ago that 20 young kids, like 5 and 6-year-olds, were gunned down at Sandy Hook Elementary. Phil Waters, I was there covering it. I will never forget arriving on scene, seeing body bags out in the distance, and reporters crying and sobbing. And I was just basically emotionless, as I usually am. I was kind of in the zone. And I remember a reporter saying to me, this was pre-kids for me, but once you have children, you will understand how much this hurts. Your reflection on this, Phil Waters, it's 12 years ago. They graduated high school this year. 20 will never graduate anything. And I don't know. It's hit me hard. I'll tell you a quick story, and I'll never forget this. When we got down there the very first night, it was absolute chaos, and we were starving, as we always are, because we're on the road, we're reporting. And we went to this little rinky-dink, tiny little diners are a thing in the Northeast. Little tiny diner off of like a little road, and it was jam-packed, and like the town was coming together. And at the counter was a guy wearing a cowboy hat, and he was interesting, and I was eavesdropping. Anyway, long story short, it turned out he was the father of one of the little boys that was murdered that day. And I put 2 and 2 together. He was obviously a local, and he was a regular there, and he was talking. And my photographer and I, this would have been the quote unquote biggest get at that moment, would have been the biggest get to get a father first day to speak to you. And he was talking to people. And my photographer and I said to each other, there's no way in hell we're doing that. Just no way in hell. And we just walked out and shook his hand and wished him, gave him our prayers and our condolences. But Phil Waters doesn't get worse than 5 and 6-year-old kids being gunned down in a mass shooting. Your reflection 12 years after this fact.
well, there is no way to explain what the cacophony of conflicting emotion comes across when you walk into a scene like that. When you walk into a scene of a dead child or dead children. And it would be I would be unable to explain it here. So all I can tell you is that it is one of those cases, and I've said it before, that those types of cases, those are the ones that stick to you. And I think that we as homicide detectives that get involved in those cases, we only have a few of those in us. Having being a father with 9 grandchildren, it's it would be very tough for me to explain what a scene like that impacts on you.
Phil, do you have any doubt that all those officers that responded to that scene have those images emblazoned on their brains for time immemorial?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Like I said, without getting, it's giving me the chills, but I could see some of these body bags from far, the body, not body bags, but covered little bodies. Bossy Texas chick, $1.5 billion judgment. This, of course, against Alec Jones. I will say this very bluntly. He's a despicable human being. The fact that he said that was, a hoax is despicable. And whatever this guy gets, he deserves, and then some. And guys like Joe Rogan, who platform him, are just as friggin' bad, in my opinion. But that Alex Jones is a lunatic and deserves to lose everything, in my opinion. I mean, to tell the families that was a hoax is just absolutely sickening. Scott Duffy, you've got young kids. They were probably close in age to some of these kids. You have a 17-year-old. These kids just graduate high school. Hopefully we never see this again, but with the violence in this country, it would not be surprising. Your thoughts 12 years after Sandy Hook?
Yeah. And of course Phil was a part, but we had the Connecticut State Police Superintendent Dan Stebbins, who graciously agreed to be part of our past April's Violent Crime Symposium. And he, being the colonel of the state police at the time of Sandy Hook, gave a compelling, I don't think there was a dry eye, and we're talking about cops. And what Dan did is not only take you through the investigation, but the heart-wrenching aftermath. He talks to this day about how officers cannot get those images out of their mind. There are many crimes that any officer goes through the course of their career that stay with them, haunting them, reminding them. And of course, we Phil and I talked often about what are those mechanisms that are in place in a person's life to help navigate through those. But the good colonel really talked about how this really tore deeply at not just everybody, but in particular some who were not able to or struggle this as if it was yesterday. And I can see from a very personal, professional point of view just how it's taken its toll on the head of the police agency, Connecticut State Police, who was charged with the investigation. It's just amazing. And of course, he was just telling us in the sense of, when, as a police agency, large or small, when you have something that's so traumatic, you're trying to deal with the actual investigation to bring ultimately justice to the families, then to be involved in so many different aspects, whether it be media, things that I'd never heard of, just talking about the massive amount of tourist buses that were flooding this small town, and what do you do with it, right? We live in a democratic country, so there's nothing illegal, but how he had to navigate as a law enforcement agency, what boundaries you have in order to turn people away and so forth. So just an amazing, not to mention all the resources of so many different community aspects, and to realize, never forget who we're doing this for, and that is for each and every one of those children's families. And he never lost that. It was heart-wrenching, very chilling, and so I thank him for giving of his time, but at the same time, the very colonel said that I can't do this anymore, with regards to the constant telling, because of the toll that it takes, that he has to step away from it. So and then the unfortunate aspect is how many times that's taken place throughout the country, with regards to a school shooting and putting yet another community forever, for the remainder of their lives. It's amazing. And so it gives you pause to remember that it touches so many people who, from the inner perimeter of the investigation to the outer perimeter, nobody goes untouched, unscathed, and forever remembering it. So
Sharp tax. Saying it's a hoax is not defamation. No, but it's irresponsible, moronic. He's a total idiot for doing that. And there's something evil in him to do that to those families. Absolutely sickening. I would say it to you, which I am, and I would say it right to his rotund face. I should be ashamed of himself. Absolutely sickening. Moving on here. This is by the way, this is a reality in our world. Active shooter drills for my grandson in kindergarten. My son goes to a kindergarten where there's security guards with flak jackets and long guns. It's crazy, the world that we live in. So there you go. Phil Waters. We're going to slowly get to better stuff, and then we're going to end with an STS Fil and Scott investigation. We will get to that at the very end. Phil Waters, a Maryland parole and probation agent, a guy named Davis Martinez. He was on a routine resident check on Friday, May 31st, for 54-year-old convicted sex offender Emmanuel Edward Sewell. He did not report back, so officers from the Montgomery County Department of Police were dispatched to this person's home, who he was checking up on. Blinds down. They found him inside, wrapped in multiple plastic bags underneath a bed, stabbed many times to really significant parts of his body, including his face, brain, neck. He was stabbed in. I bring this up because I think people take this for granted. Parole officers have a really dangerous job, don't they? I mean, they're going to basically convicted felons' homes. This guy went in there and never came out. Your thought?
Oh yeah, these guys, parole officers, probation officers, that have to monitor and kind of follow these folks around, that are their responsibility in terms of keeping them, making sure they're abiding by the terms of their parole or probation. And yeah, it's a job I wouldn't want to do. And to the degree, I don't think in Texas they're even armed. I may be wrong about that, but I don't think parole officers and probation officers are able to carry a firearm with them. So it's they're dealing with the people that Scott and I put in those institutions, and these are bad people. And who knows what happens when that interaction goes haywire. So it'll be interesting to find out what the backstory here is, and there's always a backstory. So something obviously went very, very wrong in that particular visit.
Do they not have weapons because those weapons could be turned against them? Do you think? Is that why?
Oh, I have no idea. I just know in Texas they're not considered Texas peace officers, so they're not going to be armed unless something of that has changed. But yeah, they're not peace officers.
So Delaware and Pennsylvania, they do have, yeah. So every state is. I'm not sure of Maryland, but Delaware and Pennsylvania, probation parole officers are armed and are armed at residential checks.
By the way, Phil Waters, the ambient noise of those birds chirping and on the Big Island, it sounds like like one of those soothing sounds that you would put on an app to go to bed. I probably would not be able to stay awake on the Big Island because of those chirping birds. There have been several nugget sightings during the course of the show. We've seen them hop off of that couch. Someone wants to get back to breakdancing. Scott Duffy, Wendy Munson, no relation as far as I know to Thurman Munson, the catcher who died in a plane crash, and Ned Smith. It's sort of the blues. It's maybe beyond the blues. It's just been a rough week, but we'll get to that in a moment. Wendy Munson, Scott Duffy, she's a second grade teacher.
Before you go into that, let me make a correction or make a something I just learned. Because you're asking about weapons and parole officers, I wanted to look it up here, and according to what I have found, adult parole officers in Texas can carry a firearm, but it is not mandatory, and they are not Texas peace officers. But from what I just got here, apparently that policy went into effect in 1997. So learn something new every day.
Yes, you do. And Reese's mom says in Texas, can't they carry a gun anyway? If you're in Texas, you can carry a gun no matter what.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that. But we've got constitutional carry in Texas. But again, you're talking about specific jobs and policies and that kind of thing. So, but that's something new that I did not know, and I was happy to find that out. So thank you for that question.
IGG rocks. Is this Joel? Let's depress everyone further. Is this Joel's first Father's Day without? No, last year I think was. It's funny. My dad was Dad was never into, like, you wouldn't even know it was his birthday. You would never know it was Father's Day. He didn't even know. You'd have to tell him it was Father. Like, he was just one of these guys that just didn't care about any of that kind of stuff. So that wasn't a big deal to him, as it is to me and my children, who better have some card for me on Sunday or else. So Scott Duffy, Wendy Munson, again, I don't know if there's a relation to Thurman. She's a second grade teacher. She was arrested on October 2nd, 2023, just this past October, on suspicion of driving under the influence and child endangerment. She drove to school and taught kids there, but after months of weighing charges against her, the district attorney said that it could not file legal charges, and because while it is highly inappropriate, Scott, to teach while drunk or intoxicated, it is not illegal. Does this surprise you, Scott? It is not illegal to teach drunk, and they couldn't prove that she was driving. So no charges filed against Teacher of the Year, Wendy Munson. But Scott, nothing seems to surprise you or Phil. Does it surprise you that it is not illegal to teach under the influence of, you can be completely wasted teaching? He's stumbling, so maybe.
I think some teachers need a little assistance during the day with all the stress. I know one of my teachers in high school, had the odor of alcohol. And of course, as a high school, I couldn't tell if that was the night before or just a couple of minutes before, but I would say I enjoyed the humor. The teacher was always on point. It was English literature. So, it's probably one of the better teachers I've had. And if alcohol facilitated that education and entertainment in the classroom, all the power to them. Of course, now we have Uber, Lyft, and so forth. So who knows?
By the way, that just reminded me, and I'd like to give a special recognition to Bob Stevens. He was my journalism teacher in high school. He was a different era, a different time. He was already retiring when I was getting to high school in the 80s. He kept a giant bottle of bourbon in his desk drawer. He would hold it up. He would sometimes take a swig from it. And he was our greatest champion when it came to both journalism. He ran the school paper, but he also ran the drama department. And a lot of great people came from there. I once did an expose on Mr. Jennings, who was doing some not so kosher things. He was treating female students in a not a great way. And I wrote an article about him that appeared on the front page of the Highland Fling, probably in 1986 or 1987. And all the faculty was mad at me that I outed a teacher, and Bob Stevens came running in with the paper going, "This is journalism. This is journalism." So, our teachers are some of the most important people in our lives, and I will never, ever forget Bob Stevens or his bottle of bourbon. I might start to weep today once again. It's a very emotional day. I now miss Bob Stevens. Scott Duffy, I'm going to tell you a story that literally could be an 11-hour story, maybe 13 hours, and I'm shocked I haven't told you this. We had another teacher in high school named Mr. Smith, and I'm only sharing this because of the Philadelphia connection here. Mr. Smith, if you go and Google teacher from 1950s, it is Mr. Smith's profile. He had black greased hair. He wore like the button-down shirt with the pocket protectors. He had like his pants pulled up with a belt buckle. He was also like 100 when I was in high school, and I'm in my 50s now, so he'd be 150. He was a chemistry. He would hold up test tubes, and he was always grunting, doing that. And but he was a diehard Philadelphia Phillies fan. Scott Duffy, huge Phillies fan. And this is a true story. He once drove to a Philadelphia Phillies game from New Jersey. He was such an absent-minded professor that he forgot that he drove. He took a ride back, a bus or something, and then reported his car stolen. He then remembered that he drove, took the bus back, was driving his car back from the Phillies game, and was arrested for driving a stolen vehicle because he did not have his ID on him, and it was finally all worked out. That's my Bob Stevens. Mr. Smith story there. So Scott doesn't seem fazed or like he could care less, but he was an amazing.
Well, I mean, he's an
amazing chemistry teacher.
I've had a few of those type of stolen cars stopped. You always wonder when a stolen car comes up stolen to us, and then when you make a stop, it's definitely stolen when they take off. But when they stop, it does give you pause. Why does somebody who just stole a car is going to actually stop? So I've had some that, hey, I live in Philadelphia. I reported my car stolen. I got it back, and I just have not told, or the police have not taken it out of the system, or some computer complication, technical issue. And
I thought you were going to say I had one of those types of teachers, but you said I've had those types of arrests or stuff. Yeah, interesting. Jay says my Spanish teacher was wasted most of the time. Miss OG, my journalism teacher smoked while teaching cigarettes. That was a thing. Phil Waters, I don't want to date you, Phil Waters, but did you ever have a teacher that would smoke while teaching the class? Phil Waters.
No, in the schools that I attended, there was the teacher's lounge. And so when the door would open on the teacher's lounge, the huge cloud of smoke would emerge from that doorway and into the hallway. So we all knew what they were doing, but they were doing it within the confines of the teacher's lounge.
You know what's crazy? We had, Scott, you probably had this, and Phil, you probably definitely had this. We had I did not partake, but there was a smoking lounge for students in high school. Imagine that today.
We had a smoke hole. Sure did.
Yeah, crazy.
Even in junior, when I was in junior high, at Eli Whitney Junior High School.
Do you imagine?
That's where all the, all the rebels went, and all the bad guys supposedly went there.
Yeah. Do you imagine? I can't imagine like my kid calling me and being like, yeah, I'll call you after I'm done at the smoking lounge at school. Analytical Blarney AB. This special education teacher is currently cleaning up champagne all over her bathroom because it was shaken up, apparently. Happy summer all. That's a good problem to have. Scott, I had no idea. Philadelphia doesn't even have public schools anymore. So sad. Is this true? I don't. That seems kind of crazy.
That's a confusing statement.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Let's move it along because I want to get to the investigation. These last few stories have nothing to do with true crime. This story I read like twice because I just didn't understand. It made no sense. But 23 sets of twins, Phil Waters, just graduated from a Massachusetts middle school, making up 10% of the 8th grade class. The identical and fraternal twins graduated from Pollard Middle School in Needham, Mass. on Wednesday. We typically have anywhere from 5 to 10 sets at most. Given our numbers, we have approximately 450 to 500 children in each grade. So this was extraordinarily high. Phil Waters, 23 sets of twins in one graduating middle school in one town in Massachusetts. What do you make of this?
Well, there must be something in the water.
Crazy.
I have a set of twin grandchildren, but only one. But that is kind of phenomenal. Like I said, there must be something going on there. And where was that? Massachusetts?
Needham, Massachusetts, which is not far from the infamous Karen Reed trial right now.
Something happening there in Massachusetts, sounds like.
I mean, it seems like statistically impossible, but I did read it, and Lavender Bridges wants to know, like Phil, what's in the water in Needham. This is the last story. I don't know if anyone knows this, but Carm, my beloved mother's favorite animal in the world, is the elephant. When my father was still here, they actually took a trip to Thailand. There's a photo of my mom and dad. There's 2 elephants sitting down on their behinds, and my dad is inside the legs of one, and my mother's inside the legs of another. If that elephant decided to lay down, both my parents would have been crushed in that very moment. But I guess the Thai elephant trainer was excellent. But Scott Duffy, scientists have now figured out that African elephants call each other and respond to individual names. This is all according to new scientific research. This is coming from Duke University. The names are one part of elephants' low rumbles that they can hear over long distances across the savanna. Scientists believe that animals with complex social structures and family groups that separate and then reunite often may be more likely to use individual names. There's no other reason to believe in God than this, Scott Duffy. What about the fact that, we have such an arrogance about us? I have a running joke with Carm. When we see an iguana, I will say to Carm, does that iguana, in your opinion, have any less reason to live than us? Because I feel like all living creatures have a right to live. But Scott Duffy, this takes it to the next level. Elephants are, I think they might have met, I don't know, they said the savannah. I don't know if that's the correct thing. But anyway, Scott Duffy, what about the fact that elephants are calling each other by name? Does this blow you? Does this surprise you?
Do I believe it?
Yeah. Do you believe it? That's the first question.
Well, so I love these stories, right? They're definitely good stories. But who can prove it wrong? What elephant is going to come out and say, "Listen, this is full of crap. Who is this? I just
And then the news would be a talking elephant.
But then there, but these are serious scientists. Misbelieving says Phil is not buying it. Is this true, Phil? It must go directly to the source. Do you not buy this?
Where was this study done?
This is Duke University, Phil. This is no 2-bit school. And
Okay, so here we go. Here are our tax dollars funding this ridiculous freaking study like anybody even gives a crap.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm not buying it. And how did they determine that the elephants are naming each other? I mean, how did they determine that? They walked up and, it's like, Horton, here's the who, and walked up and said, tell what what's her name? What's her name over here? Now, I would imagine that what their elephants are doing, it's the tone of the sound that they're making that the elephant that they're calling on recognizes. And so I doubt they're saying, hey, Frank, come over here for a second. Let's polish up. Let's polish up.
Look at it. Ned Smith said, panties wadding. He has to destroy Taylor Burton, who said, love the elephants calling each other by name. I read yesterday that dolphins apparently do this too, or whales do it as well. Let me just destroy Phil here.
How do they possibly?
So let me tell you.
Oh my gosh.
Before I get into the investigation, let me tell you a story.
Fantasy Island.
The COE and I, we went to Rwanda, of all places, for our honeymoon there in Tanzania, because it was my lifelong dream to see animals in the wild. And in Rwanda, you can see gorillas. And Diane Fossey, Gorillas in the Mist, that's where she lived and studied. And what does that say? Does that say Rwanda? Wow, look at that. What are the with the gorilla on that? Were you there, Phil?
No, I was not. My daughter-in-law has done a lot of really great work in trying to bring clean water to
That's
Rwanda.
amazing.
So she brought me this back from Rwanda.
That's a cool hat. So long story short, Diane Fossey studied the gorilla language, and then you have trackers. So you literally, for like 4 hours, you're walking through like knee-deep mud. It was a COE and I, and you've got someone in the back with a rifle and a tracker in the front. And as you get closer, there's like 23 families of gorillas in this rainforest. But as you get closer, the trackers start to speak the gorilla language. And it goes like this. It goes, ma, 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 ma. He started doing this. And we're like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, oh, we're calling the gorillas. And sure enough, they start to respond, Phil Waters. They start to respond.
Well, if that's the case, then I've been speaking gorilla for years.
Here's the craziest part. Bill's going to just shake his head and be like, these guys just think you're the dumbest tourist. But when we got close, there was a lot of back and forth between the silverback gorilla and the lead tracker. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And meanwhile, I should have been terrified. There's an 800-pound gorilla that I'll get to that in a second. Anyway, the tracker is talking to this gorilla, and I'm like, what are you guys saying? And he said that he was informing us, true story, asked the COE, that the baby was not feeling well, and they're very serious about their gorillas. You can't, so we had to stay at like a longer distance, or we had to wait. I forget what it was, but this silverback gorilla that's like 800 pounds is laying on his back, like eating blades of grass, and all us idiot tours. There's only 4 of us because they take you in really small groups. Are taking pictures. Suddenly, that silverback gorilla, talking about Scott and his dance moves, this thing rolled up so fast and ran right past me. The strength and the ease with which that guy blew past me and ran up a tree. I mean, he could have literally just ripped my body into 2 pieces. It was a definite leap of faith. But the COE and I survived, and here we are in one piece. And now to the final thing. I don't want to make everyone sad. Fil and Scott, it has been torrential rain for days. The COE earlier in the week was down in Key Largo with her sister who was in town. And she said, I'm driving back, to which I said, Fil and Scott, I said, it's a really bad idea. You are not going to make it. She said, what are you talking about? It's not raining here. Well, it doesn't rain sometimes in the Keys because the Keys are farther south. I said, you got to believe me. So long story short, I talked them into they stay another night, which I don't want them to do that because I'm going to have to pay the extra night of the hotel. But safety first when it comes to my kids, right? And my wife. So she gets back the following day, and the deluge has continued. And I barely make it from this studio, which is 3 blocks from my home, through 3-4 feet of water. Somehow I get my car into my driveway, and as I'm getting in, they're all back from the Keys, and the COE says to me, we have nothing to eat. No one's delivering. Well, no one's delivering because like 28 inches of rain have fallen in a day. So she says, I'm going to go pick up some pizza. And I said, it's a really bad idea to take our beloved Chrysler Pacifica minivan into 3 or 4 feet of water. COE goes, long story short, minutes turn into hours turn into days, not into days, but hours turn into a couple of hours. COE comes back with 6 boxes of pizza above her soaked outfit, which was sweatpants and a t-shirt, 6 boxes of pizza above her head, no car. So what happened to the car? It's 2 blocks to our south, floating in our residential neighborhood. The car is still on 90 whatever street, stuck there. There's engine damage. COE texted me and said, I have one regret in life, not listening to you. I can't believe that's the only one. That very same day, as I said, Fil and Scott, I'm getting to the investigation. I had to drive my vehicle back. I barely made it home. In that moment when I was racing into the studio earlier during the deluge, my cell phone in my back pocket as I leapt breakdance style over a 4-foot puddle, it floated and flew out of my back pocket. My iPhone, not this one because the other one doesn't work anymore, but that iPhone fell into a 3.5-foot puddle of water. I retrieved it. It worked for most of the day somehow, and then just went berserk and stopped working. So I spent, I don't know, 3.5 hours at Verizon yesterday. But after all of this aggravation and stress and water and worrying about just life in general, where did this go? I can't move here. COE, where are you? You know what? Her computer died. I cannot believe it because I had images to show. Guarantee you one. Here we go. COE's computer dies. So Fil and Scott, this is where I need your expertise. I go out and look at my car yesterday. I'm like, something is odd after driving. 3 of my 4, I was calling them hubcaps, but I now have found out they're called wheel covers in 2024. 3 of my 4 wheel covers are gone. This is the question. This is the investigation. Were they stolen Miami cocaine cowboy style, or did they fall off from the pressure of the water? It's a 3-block route. I have driven back and forth since. I've not seen any tire covers. Why would someone steal 3 and not 4? Or was it simply the water pressure that pulled them off? Scott Duffy, I will go to you first. What is your investigative chops? What is it telling you?
These are the plastic pop-offs.
Yeah, I didn't know they were plastic pop-off because I thought they were going to cost me like $600 a piece to replace. They're like $25 a piece, thankfully. But yeah, they're gone. They're gone. My tire's exposed.
Amazon, $34.99 for 4.
Yeah, but did someone steal them or did they come off from the water?
But you did go through heavy water, right?
very heavy waters. Scott.
Yeah. Yeah, my gut reaction would be the water took them, and wherever the water subsided, would follow that to the end, to some river. Get in the river, and if it takes you, however long to retrieve those, follow the water for as long as it will take.
It's amazing that there's actually 1,300 people still on this chat, especially with this comment from Erica Spears. Joel, no one cares about your wheel.
Good call, Erica. Good
Phil Waters, I wanted to show you the photos, but the COE, of course, or compute.
This is your little minivan we're talking about?
No, this is my other vehicle.
What is your other vehicle?
It's a Model 3 Tesla.
Oh.
Well, for crying out freaking loud. Okay. So you got the novelty car that nobody's buying. They're absolutely useless. And there you go. And you're driving. And now who's driving it?
Me.
You were driving it? You put it in the water?
I had to get home. There was no other way.
Okay, well, look, those silly electric cars don't function in water or snow. So, and those little wheel cover things, perhaps if they were stolen, they only needed 3. But yeah, I'm with Scott. The fact that you're driving a Tesla gives me pause about your judgment regarding vehicles.
Hey, your brother drives a Tesla because we were talking.
My brother drives a Tesla. Actually, he bought it for his wife, my sister-in-law, who was just here for 10 days. She was great.
Oh,
Wow. But my brother's he's completely sold out to this stuff because he was involved. He's an engineer, and he was actually involved in the EV1 program at General Motors.
Mm.
And had General Motors pursued that research further, they would be the Tesla of today.
Mm.
But they did not. They did away with the program.
It could be a whole.
But yeah, he's a true believer in all that stuff. Me, not so much. I want to hear the engine, and I don't think we will ever be rid of internal combustion engines.
I think you might be right because I think there are a lot of maybe when a few more generations come and go, maybe that'll be over. But did we get the pizza? Yes, we did, Misdemeanor OG. She got a ridiculous amount of pizza too. The Pacifica, the minivan. Phil, what would I have to pay you to get into a Chrysler Pacifica minivan?
Well, I'll tell you, I have actually been in a Chrysler Pacifica. My brother owned one for a time, so I have been in that particular vehicle.
The last question.
And also, full disclosure, I've also driven my son-in-law's Tesla. I've been in my other son-in-law's Tesla. I have. We've got a friend here on the Big Island that has a Tesla. So there's a lot of misguided people in my family and my circle of friends. And I've also, this is a confession that I have never made before, but I've also driven my daughter's Prius.
Coming out. This is right here. Breaking news on SGS.
I'm coming out. I'm outing myself. And I've always told my family that if they ever had a picture of me in driving that Prius, that they would destroy it immediately.
Yeah.
But, so I'm just going to out myself now before it ever gets out in the public.
Have you
thought about? I think that should be an immediate disqualification of membership into the Ferrari of America or whatever.
Yes, the Ferrari. Yes, if they
ever.
Scott,
they gave me a waiver. It was a moment in time. It was a long time ago, and so I've been forgiven of the sins of the past. And
I'm surprised you did not disown her for that. Final question.
Well, my daughter-in-law, she drives a Prius to this day. So,
final question.
I've been surrounded by these things for a long time.
Phil Waters, you're the wise man among us, which also means the oldest. Did you even know? I did not know that they're no longer called hubcaps. They're called wheel covers. Did you know? You're a car guy, so you might have known this.
Well, I've used the term interchangeably, yeah, because in my day, a hubcap is kind of a different animal than a wheel cover. So, I mean, a hubcap was like a full piece that went on the entire wheel. So these wheel covers are more they're plastic for one thing, and they kind of screw into the behind the lug nuts. So it's just it's really a distinction without a difference.
Yeah. I have a final question, actually. Then we'll get final thoughts. We're way over time here, but listen, I don't want to complain because I live in the Sunshine State, but I haven't seen it for probably 7 days. My dogs are losing their minds. I'm losing my mind. It's summer break. The kids are not going to camp for some reason because the COE thought that, I mean, she finds ways to torture me, and this is one way. She's like, yeah, we won't send them to camp this summer. We'll just have them bug you every single day. Scott's breakdancing is more powerful. And I just lost my final thought, and it was so important. And it was for Scott. It was so important. It was so critically important. And now I forgot it.
Well, you know what?
I remember it.
It either wasn't very important or it was a lie.
Yeah, I remember it now. So as I'm driving away, so the COE now is like, oh, can you take me around the corner? Because, I got to go check on the car. I'm like, it's a block away. She's like, well, just give me a ride. So I give her a ride. And then when she gets out of the car and she's walking back in the house, she goes, by the way, this is for you, Scott. She goes, your undercarriage looks a little loose. I'm like, I don't even know what an undercarriage is. So I then get out of my car to look down, and like, it's like a Lego set. There's like a little piece of plastic that has like pieces that should bounce into the car. And I was doing this to try to lock it back in. It won't lock in. Any advice to me about now I've got to deal with the undercarriage of the Tesla on top of the wheels. Any advice?
Is it like just a little cover piece in the front, or is it the whole?
It's like it goes from the back door to the front door. It's like a side cover piece, but right now I'm missing 3 hubcaps, and I look like, the Sanford and Son junkyard. But this little plastic piece is now about to fall off, all because I had to drive home from here. I'm going to lose my mind. What do I do to get that little piece of plastic back in place?
Go buy a real car.
Does Ferrari have any plastic on it?
Does Ferrari have a what?
Does it come with any plastic on it?
Oh, golly, yeah, there's all sorts of. I mean, that's the way it is. But of course, my 308s and my 360, less in the world of plastic. I mean, of course, there's plastic. There's plastic all over these cars. But yeah, that thing you got. Oh boy, I don't know. That's. Of course, you can't get anything. You can't get anything for that car you're driving, Joel. That's the other thing, because Elon slashed the prices on his Teslas. So
it's crazy. I'm just trying to find
what model is it, by the way?
By the way, it was 2:52 p.m. yesterday afternoon on Thursday. The COE texts me, for the record, my only regret in life was driving my damn car during a flash flood. And I responded, that's it? That's your only regret? She goes, yes, my only regret.
What model Tesla is it?
It's a 3. It's a cheap one. My minivan costs more than that car. She goes, my only regret ever. I don't really have regrets, but I do regret this. At least she doesn't regret.
Is it a total loss? It's a total loss.
Yeah. Listen, what I'm going to do this weekend, I'm serious. I have digital toxicity. I've been on my phone. I'm turning everything off this weekend, and I'm doing nothing. I'm going to just lay in a vegetative state for 3. I'm not looking at Twitter. Not looking at all the people that hate me on Twitter. I'm not going on Instagram. I'm not doing any of this. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just going to sit in my house. I'm still trying to train Fred Brown, who won't stop yapping every time. Fred Brown could leap over the globe of the world for I was so desperate last night. I went into my kids' goldfish, not the real goldfish, the snack goldfish. When I opened that bag in bed with nothing else to eat but some goldfish, Fred Brown literally leapt like a kangaroo over to me to get one little goldfish. And I got to control this guy. He's out of control. But anyway, it's been enough whining today. I've had a very long week. I'm sure others have had tougher weeks. I can't imagine who, but I'm sure others have. Scott Duffy, your final thoughts today before we go to the patriarch of this show, Phil Waters.
Is it just the three of us left?
Yeah, we're just talking to ourselves. No, someone said hubcaps are metal. I don't know why anyone watches this on Fridays. I really don't. I really have no idea. But Scott, you're.
Well, if it looks like I'm going crazy, there's just a little fly I'm trying to get.
Sure there is, Scott. Sure there is.
It's like one flew over the cuckoo's nest.
We got your back. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
By the way, I've always said if I ever go to prison, that's what I'm doing. I'm swatting imaginary flies to keep people away from me. But go ahead, Scott. Your final thoughts today.
Right. Well, next week I'll have my high school graduation picture with my
Oh, please, yes.
with my high school breakdancing nickname. So happy Father's Day for sure to all those. And I saw some good comments. I saw some comments of obviously people who have lost their fathers long ago, and I'm one of them. So I share your pain. But and then of course, so my mom became the dual role. So she's always she's just been fantastic. She's still alive. So I'll say happy Father's Day to her because she had that role of mom and dad throughout our early years. So happy Father's Day, Phil and Joel, and to all the good dads out there. And just reap of the benefits of all that love.
Scott, you brought up mothers, so I have to tell this story, which is not for either of your virgin ears or religious ears, but this is just another day in my life. Last night, I was thinking of my beloved mother because my father's no longer here. It's been raining all week. She's been alone. It breaks my heart. So I called her and I said, my mother's very quick. You've met her, both of you. And I wasn't thinking really. So I just said to Carm, I said, what do you want to do for Father's Day? And without missing a beat, like with not even a split second, she goes, grow a penis. And I just was like, and she said to me, what kind of question is that? I said, what do you mean? She said, what do you mean? What do I want to do for Father's Day? I don't celebrate Father's Day, but it was just that split second reaction where she said that. Phil has lost all respect for my entire family, but that's just the strange humor in my family. And that was the response I got. So, but I just found it interesting because you thought of your mother. I thought of my mother, but you probably got a nice, sweet.
And she said you were complaining.
No. I never complained, Phil. I just simply.
I know that, but her response to whatever you were not complaining about was grow a penis.
No. I was being really thoughtful. And I didn't want Carm to be alone on Father's Day. So I called and this conversation started and I said, Carm, Mom, I said, what do you want to do for Father's Day? She goes, grow a penis. Like, what do you mean? What do I want to do for Father's Day? And this
was a rhetorical question.
Right. It was her being sarcastic because she doesn't celebrate Father's Day.
That's the great thing between you and your mom, that's what she responds to you with, because really that was kind of a silly question. Because it's Father's Day, it's not Mother's Day. So
correct.
Good for Carm. Good for Carm that she puts you in your place one more time.
Thank you. And that's exactly what I was getting at. So she just basically whatever. By the way, Vesper makes a very important distinction. Joel does not complain. He whines. That is very important.
Well, that is true. You know, and I have a sign in my office that has a circle with the red stripe through it. And if the image is a person doing this, with tears, and it says no whining. So I'm going to send that to you. That'll be something we will need to put on the graphic here at some point.
Please. Look at this from Carmela Corleone. I had the pleasure of meeting her and her beautiful son up in Toronto. Happy Father's Day, guys. Friday shows are the best, Joel, by the way. But look at, I bring this up. I don't know if I showed this to you too last time. This is her cat. The cat's name is Carmela Corleone. It is a sphinx, I think, or a lynx. I never know the difference. They rhyme. But it is a completely bald cat with these giant blue, this picture doesn't do it justice how big his eyes are in blue. I thought you might like that. You guys are animal lovers.
I think of E.T. when I see that.
Yeah, it's a completely bald cat. Yeah, it's a huge cat. It's actually really beautiful. We are starting to lose viewers at this point.
Can't imagine why.
Yeah, I can't either. But Phil Waters, the patriarch, lead us out of here with a final thought as we approach Father's Day.
The first thing I would like to mention is I just saw that a Harris County deputy constable has been shot in an ambush after a car chase, and he is been transported to the hospital, and his condition is unknown. So I would just ask that you keep he and that agency and his family in your prayers. Sorry to end it on such a dark note, but it's always important when these officers are shot, attacked, assaulted, killed in the line of duty. And they're the thin blue line. They're the ones that separate the citizenry from the madness that's out there. So keep him. He's not been named yet, so keep him in your prayers. I would just close with a happy Father's Day to you two guys, all the fathers that are out there, and I would suggest that we think about who we are as fathers. There are way too many men, I'm not even going to use that term, there are way too many males that have run around here, and they've spread their seed all over the place, and they take no responsibility for being fathers. And it's a big, big responsibility. And I always read about, you read about people that have had problems and issues and so forth and so on. And 9 times out of 10, they'll talk about they had a bad relationship with their father. And, it's important. And I think fatherhood has been, over the years, by those that wish to destroy it, has been diluted. It has been tried to redefine it, try to remove the roles of fathers from the families. And I think that's despicable. And it's had a debilitating effect on families and on this nation as a whole. So I would just hope and pray that fathers out there everywhere recognize their responsibilities to their families, and that they are the spiritual leaders in their homes, whether they want it or not. And just hope that everybody has a great one, and acknowledges on Father's Day our Heavenly Father as well. And love the time with you guys, and the SDS Nation, at least the ones that are left at the end of this podcast.
The 3 that are left are us. Love you for that, Phil. Echo that. Even though Phil just said it's all about being a good father, my message to my kids: give me some space this weekend. Give me some space this weekend, and you better have a damn card for your dad on Sunday. But I'll see you guys in a few minutes. Believe it or not, I've got a run of all places to finish off Friday to FedEx, and guess what? It's pouring out here again, so maybe the final wheel cover will go. I will keep everyone updated, but I'm staying off the Twitters and the Instagrams. And love these 2 gentlemen. Love you, STS Nation. Love you, America. By the way, on Monday, we've got criminal defense attorney Mark Betterow doing live coverage and analysis of the circus that is the Karen Reed trial. We will see you then. Have a safe weekend. Don't lose any hubcaps.